Okay, a couple more for us to practice. So 16C now. Let's go ahead and use the intercepts to write this equation. There's one at -2. There's one at +3. So I know my equation will be y equals some leading coefficient times x plus 2 times x minus 3. So let's figure out what A is, but let's do it in a clever way. If I look at that, I see I have a y-intercept at 0, 6. So I can plug in 6 for y, and I can plug in 0 for x. So I'll be left with A times 2 times -3, which is nice because that means 6 equals -6a, and so a equals -1. So I know a is -1, which is what's flipping my graph upside down. So it's a negative parabola. And now let's go ahead and do the other forms. Now, if I want standard form, y equals -x squared, what's my middle term going to be? Well, I've got a 2 times, 2 plus a -3, a -3 and a minus, I can't talk. A -3 and a +2 would leave me with a minus x, but then I have that negative out front, so that's going to make it a plus x, right? I said 2 minus 3 is -1, knowing that those would be the coefficients on my x terms, looking at the 2 and the -3 in the factored form. But I have that minus out front, so I needed to make my final x term positive instead. So -x squared plus x, and then I could plug in 0, but I already know that my y-intercept is 6, so I know that this has to be plus 6 right there. So there's one equation. There's the other equation. Let's find this last one just by completing the square. So y equals -x squared minus x plus 6. Pull out that negative. Then y equals -x minus half of the coefficient would be x minus 1/2 squared plus 6 minus my 1/2 squared times my leading coefficient of -1. So this becomes y equals -x minus 1/2 squared plus 6. 1/2 squared is 1/4, but I'm subtracting 1/4 times -1, so I'm really adding 1/4. So y equals -x minus 1/2 squared plus 6.25. Being lazy, not wanting to write that as a fraction. That would be my final answer. Does it look like that? Yeah, it does look like that is up at 6.25, and it does look like it is at an x value of 1/2. So I think we're pretty good there.